Ah, yes, the gamer, thinking he can play his video game on day one.
Wow, I sure can't wait to play this brand new game. Hey, yo, I hate to interrupt. You just got this 100 gig download coming at you. Oh, come on, man.
Fascinating. He's trying to buy some in-game content.
You know, that operator does look pretty good. Yeah, I'll buy it. Oh, sick. You bought a new operator. That's awesome. We just added some recoil, too. Yeah. But I just bought it. Oh, don't worry about it. We're actually nerfing their gadget, too. What do you mean? I just paid for it, though. And taking off a scope. Bro, that's so unfair. I already don't care. The money. Well, at least my controller doesn't need an update. No, wait. Today we're talking about patches. No!
Why are we still here? Just to suffer.
Hey, welcome back. There is absolutely no shortage of bullshit going on in the gaming industry that I will absolutely milk for future views. But there's one thing in particular that I have seen nobody really talking about. That is, without a doubt, by and far, one of the fastest growing tumors I've seen in the gaming industry. And I'm tired of pretending that it's not. And that is video game patches. From lazy early access campaigns to the balancing updates that punish players for having fun and basically steal from them, we're breaking down how patches have fundamentally changed the games we've paid for after we've paid for them. That's theft. I don't like being thefted. Because you see, this all came about one day as I was sitting down, eating my boogers, waiting for Siege to update for like the 14th time this week, to be greeted with a slew of patch notes that in summary read, Dear player, on the behalf of Ubisoft, in an effort to ruin any meta anyone's found, ever, we've changed some 1s to 0s on your favorite operators. Sincerely, Barack Obama. I was appalled to see they've added so many nerfs to the characters and guns, despite that they've been doing this consistently for years now. And don't worry, whether or not you know dick about Siege is completely irrelevant. Because this touches every corner of gaming. I swear to God, if Ubisoft owned rock, paper, scissors, they'd nerf the fuck out of scissors just because they sound sharp. And you may be skeptical, right? You may be thinking like, oh, Ubisoft wouldn't nerf rock, paper, scissors, that's just ridiculous. Well, actually, I don't know about that, because they decided to take the 1.5 scope away from like half their operators in the game.
I was acting. Or was I?
That's the equivalent of squinting a little harder at your screen. Oh, but that's really what's breaking the game here. It's not the, constant crashing, or the frequent server issues, or the fact that the Uplay overlay looks like an elderly person's iPad settings. No, it's definitely those little baby scopes. Or the fact that they took out one of the best maps in the entire game to replace it with something 10 times shittier, without even giving players the option to boot up the old map. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's break into the actual details on why this is such a problem in the gaming industry. You see, one of the biggest issues patches bring in, that's also the most obvious, is that it promotes lazy development. You don't need to perfect your game if you can just fix it in the future. And that's worked for a few titles like No Man's Sky. It's also completely ass-fucked a few titles like this one, which have completely alienated their fan base and changed the game after people have bought it. It also lets developers be completely lazy while rolling out patches that make huge impacts on the game before they even really test them, because they know they can just patch it out later. Don't believe me? Well, a little game called Counter-Strike decided to one day add on a brand new pistol that had the same damage as the most powerful gun in the entire game. Nothing mattered anymore. It was just pure hysteria. Just a little pistol completely turned one of the world's biggest esports upside down on its head. But that's not the whole story here. See, this update was very special for one reason. It was the equivalent of giving Adderall and pickaxes to the homeless population and telling them there's gold underneath the roads. It gave power to the underdogs. See, what Valve did differently here is that they added a massive buff that all players could use to their own advantage. And this is like the legendary tier of update. You hardly ever see these. From a percentage standpoint, here's why. Say you buy $100 of a random cryptocurrency no one's ever heard of because you're schizophrenic. So that $100 goes down 50%. What are you left with? $50. Okay, now say that new stock price goes up 50%. What are you left with? Well, it's not $100, it's 75. If you reduce the effectiveness of a weapon or an ability by a certain percentage, then give that percentage back based on its new base stat, well, you're never gonna be where it originally was. Now, I understand that's not a huge factor at play because maybe game designers aren't looking at it from a percentage perspective. Okay, that's fair. It's just an easier way to show how you can take value away easier than it is to give it back. But the real truth of the matter is that if there's a problem in a game that requires balancing, where players are using a specific advantage through some means of playing the game or an exploit, whatever, you don't fix the game by bringing everything else to its power. You just take away the sore spot. So when companies feel the need to balance their video games, they're much more likely to be nerfs rather than buffs. But after a while, when you start stacking up these balancing updates on top of each other, you start to take away a serious amount of power and agency away from the player. You're basically punishing them for having fun. We have to understand why this is such a colossal fucking issue. There is a major difference between everything being overpowered and balanced and everything being underpowered and balanced as a result of that. And I'll tell you why. I would go to this indoor paintball arena all the time, right? And they would limit your FPS to 250, which is complete baby shit. So what they do is that they test your gun, put a little sticker on it, and everybody would whip out an Allen key and just make their guns back to 300 FPS.
I sense no danger here.
Now, why would everyone agree to make their guns 300 PSI as opposed to 250? It would make it hurt more, right? Well, as a result, the guns shot farther, the guns shot way more accurately, and it raised the stakes for everyone to not want to get hit as much. The takeaway here is that everyone was willing to raise the stakes and give their enemies an advantage if they themselves shared that same advantage. And it made the game way more fun for everybody. Well, except for the hall monitors that were, didn't want to change their FPS. And I already know there's going to be a few of you who are thinking, oh, but the developers know it's best for the players. No, they don't. I want my house back. I just want my house back. Remember what I took from you! Okay, so we can all understand why patches are seen as no bueno. But what we need to understand is why they're so prevalent in the games we play and how this spells absolute disaster for the future of online games. To understand this better, let's look at a game called Super Smash Bros. 64.
Fat piece of shit.
You had 12 characters in the game, and they could all dunk on your ass. Everything was just way overpowered in this game. And you might be thinking, oh, Ness wasn't that good. Fuck that. Everyone had a friend named Mikey who could kick your ass with Ness regardless. The point being, instead of just using a few viable characters, you get to use the entire roster because it's about how you use your advantage against their advantage. Now, fast forward a few years to Super Smash Bros. Melee, which featured a way larger roster with more characters and maps and potential for imbalances. But 20 years later, and despite of all its complexity, people are still figuring out the most effective tactic available to them in this game. You have an evolving competitive scene that's changing every few months. But what changed? It wasn't the game, it was the way people were playing it, because there wasn't a single patch that this game received to change any of the balancing. That's pretty insane. Part of the reason these games were so well balanced is because they had to be in order to sell well, because that's where the money came from. You're only going to play it if it gets good reviews, and it has to be satisfying and fun if you're going to buy it. So therefore, it has to be properly balanced, and it has to be enjoyable from the get-go. And any imbalances that were in the game are just a feature now. If you're someone who finds a special way to play the game to your advantage, you're in serious jeopardy of some shitweasel somewhere changing a 1 to a 0, rendering your entire playstyle obsolete. And that's only part of the problem, because there's a bigger exponent to all of this that magnifies this problem 10 times, and that is money! And this is where things get really ugly here. Okay, so how do games make money? You can sell the game, you can sell cosmetics, or you can sell new content in the form of DLC. Well, guess what? Almost every online game is selling some version of these three things. I don't have any problem with cosmetics or whatever, but the big issue I have is with DLC, and this is where the greatest threat lies. See, in order to sell new content, you have to give consumers a reason to buy the content. And how do you sell that in competitive games? You have to give that content an edge, or at least offer something unique that adds more complexity to the game. And now you're stuck with a conflict of interest. Do you try to maintain the balance and integrity of the game, or do you try to make money? Obviously, you go for money, but now you're stuck with the problem. So what happens? You add in this new complexity, you add in this new edge, and then after a while, you take it away. And you rarely ever give it back. And then over time, when you keep adding these new things to the game, because that's your source of revenue, you are now adding much more complexity to the game that fundamentally change the core of how the game is played, and then you nerf the other aspects of the game that make you feel like you're having fun in order to maintain some sense of balancing. If I had to guess how companies have been getting away with this, I would say by one, the fact that we've all signed their user and license agreement, which of course is something we've all read and memorized to the T. and that they have you use in-game currency to buy the things that you want to get in the game. So they charge you with things like, oh, you don't have enough V-Bucks or Dick Cheese points or whatever to get the content that you want to buy in the game, which means you don't have to use real money to get it, although you kind of still do, but you don't, and maybe that makes it so it's like, oh, you didn't really buy the thing, but you did. You could have just earned it. I don't know. But that doesn't excuse it. It's incredibly scummy for a game company to charge money for an advantage and then take that advantage away from you. If you find a playstyle that suits you or you work up to an advantage, you can bet your ass that shit can just disappear within minutes, unannounced, just out of nowhere. If you buy a skin for a gun on an operator that you like and then they make that operator shitty, well, you feel cheated, and it's a major threat to gaming because this touches every corner of it. Every competitive game has this as a feature now where anything can be patched out in the name of balancing, which can completely take away the satisfaction from a game. And if you're feeling like games aren't fun anymore, I've got this video that'll explain it for you. I'll see you guys next time.